everyone, it's Wednesday and you're watching Within the Frame. I'm Kim Putin. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un returned home after his 6-day trip to Russia. During his visit, he had a summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin and also toured a series of key military sites. Amid global society's mounting concerns over the strengthening of military cooperation between Pyongyang and Moscow, the 78th session of the UN General Assembly kicked off this Monday for a week of high-level meetings and discussions that will include this issue. World leaders have gathered as speakers at this year's assembly, and South Korean President Yoon is not an exception. What do our experts see as significant about the Kim Putin Summit, and what remarks or measures can we expect from the UN General Assembly? For more on this, we have invited Doctor Go Myong-hyun, a senior fellow at the Asan Institute for Policy Studies. Welcome, Dr. Go.
It's good to be here.
Good to see you. Now, we also have Dr. Mark Berry, the Associate Editor Emeritus of the International Journal on World Peace. Good to see you, Dr. Berry.
And good evening to both of you.
Good evening. Now, Dr. Berry, first question to you. So, like I said before, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and Russian President Vladimir Putin met each other for the first time in more than 4 years. What was your main takeaway from the recent Kim Putin Summit? And based on the highs and lows of the two countries have experienced, what significance did this summit have?
You know, the feel for this summit was kind of like full circle. Back to the future. I would call it back to Papa, because it was the Soviet Union that, quote unquote, liberated Northern Korea, accepted the Japanese surrender in 1945, and later turned it into a client state in 1948. So it's, in some ways, consciously or unconsciously, it's as if Kim had gone back to the origins of the state, which really owes its existence to Russia and the Soviet Union rather than China. Now, more to the point, something I had wanted to say even a few weeks ago is that when Russian Defense Minister Shoigu visited North Korea at the 70th anniversary of the Korean War armistice, my feeling is that there was stuff that they talked about on the surface, but underlying it all, I think Kim Jong-un was trying to ascertain the stability of Putin's regime and hold on power. Because Shoigu and his alleged mistreatment of the Wagner Group was the stated reason for Prigozhin, the late Prigozhin's mutiny in late June. So I think what Kim is trying to determine was what is Putin's strength, hold on power, the strength of its armed forces, and whether any more Russian mutinies were lurking under the surface. And for North Korea, the last thing you want is to see another socialist state exhibiting the wrong tendencies and the wrong examples for North Korea, which is so much smaller and so much more vulnerable. In terms of body language, I think Kim looked, in my eyes at least, uncomfortable, ill at ease around Putin. Kim projected, in my view, a slight sense of vulnerability. I think that Kim was quite aware that just 2 weeks earlier, Putin had eliminated or decapitated the entire leadership of the Prigozhin group in a plane crash. And as President Zelensky said at the UN yesterday, ask Prigozhin if Putin's promises can be trusted. So I think there was a lot of ill at ease. And finally, I would say that I think the overall purpose of the visit was strategic communication by each country, and it was not really about the ammunition, which is what the press has been making a big thing out of. I think that's much less the news. It's the projecting the image, which in and of itself projects power.
All right, I see. It's interesting how you pointed out that North Korea went back to its papa. Now, Dr. Go, given that the regime leader visited key military and technology sites, including the Yuri Gagarin aviation plant, some experts said that North Korean leader is very much interested in boosting the military cooperation with Russia in terms of the air and sea. Do you agree?
So, no, I think North Korea has always been interested in boosting its air and naval capabilities. If you look at the North Korea's conventional operational capabilities across the board, it's clearly inferior to the South Korea and let alone the United States. But then this is vulnerability or inferiorities, especially noteworthy or highlighted in the air and naval capabilities. There's a lot of catching up to do for North Korea. So North Korea has always been wanting this improvement and technological assistance, either from China or Russia, and so it's not really the lack of desire on the part of North Korea to, improve their capabilities. It's really a lack of assistance from the outside, and then now I think North Korea feels it's a golden opportunity for them to get this assistance from Russia, and Russia is very happy to tease North Koreans along by. Showcasing their cutting-edge aviation plans. The Yuri Gagarin plan is really a cutting-edge fighter jet manufacturing plan for Russia. They produced the mainstay of Russian Air Force fighter jet, Sukhoi 35, as well as the cutting-edge, the stealth fighter, Sukhoi 57. So clearly, it's probably whetting Kim Jong-un's appetite, and we know Kim Jong-un is an aviation buff. So I think all this, Kim Jong-un's own personal interest, his military necessities, as well as Russia's, as Dr. Berry put it, Russia's desire to send a message to Seoul and Washington and Tokyo, and also as Europe, that Russia could be a spoiler by helping a rogue state like North Korea, came together in this visit and then had probably an intended effect on the part of Russia, on the part of the international community as a message of warning. But on the other hand, whether Russia will indeed supply these cutting-edge weapon systems to North Korea, I'm kind of skeptical about it. First of all, unlike technology transfer, transferring weapon systems is very conspicuous, and it's going to be very difficult for Russia to justify such a blatant violation of our UN Security Council resolutions, which will jeopardize even further Russia's position in the United Nations and other important global institutions. So I'm skeptical that Russia will supply actual weapon systems to North Korea, but I think just the prospect of the closing relationship between these two countries raises alarm bells across in the world, and that's probably the intended effect that Vladimir Putin is going after.
Right, I see your point. Delving a little bit deeper into the weapons that Kim Jong-un is very interested in, some reports say that he is really into military reconnaissance satellite, as we all know, but also the hypersonic Kinzhal missiles. What are they?
So starting with the satellites, we know North Korea is way behind when it comes to military satellite technology, especially with communication and optics, because we know North Korea is not sending satellites into the orbit to explore science. It's for military purposes. Right. One of the main military purpose of having a satellite in orbit is to observe Earth. So they need a very high resolution cameras, and they need optics, and as well as a secure communication with the base on the ground. And I don't think North Korea has that technology, but Russia does. So I think this really fulfills one of Kim Jong-un's pressing need to improve its space technology and space weapon systems. When it comes to Kinzhal missile, this is very interesting because Kinzhal missile is something that North Korea. It's a different variation on the variant of North Korea's short-range ballistic missile, which they are very proud of, which is the KN-23-24 variants. These are usually ground-launched ballistic missiles, but Kinzhal is essentially the same ground-launched missile, but then launched from the air. So it's an airborne missile, but it's essentially the same as the KN-23-24 short-range ballistic missiles that North Korea has tested in terms of quantity, more than 100 times last year. So I think it shows that it's essentially a strong vibe of feasibility, meaning if North Korea gets this Kinzhal technology, then North Korea will have at its disposal yet another way of using their KN-23 and 24 missiles.
Right, I see. Now, Dr. Berry, we are already seeing how these two countries are being close to each other, but how are ties between these two countries expected to further develop?
Well, I think again, there's less than meets the eye. I think Russia, they pulled out all the stops, but the Russians love a circus. They love a performance. And they were trying to impress Kim And it's nice to be able to impress somebody when you don't have much of a global audience to impress anymore. But I think the Russians, they'll play the relationship by ear with North Korea, and they're going to see if Kim is worth the trouble. And frankly, Russian foreign policy over the last 250 years towards the Russian Far East is invade or conquer or get deeply penetrate areas such as Manchuria when you want to, and then when you get tired of it, you leave the Chinese diplomat a bag of coins and thank them for their trouble and leave the mess behind and walk away. And this is time and time again, this has been sort of the Russian style of interaction with the Far East, and I'm afraid Kim is going to become and fall victim to that. So I think this relationship will fall flat in a year or two, but at least initially, I think we'll see some very basic public military cooperation, such as with anti-piracy, search and rescue, very, very cursory kind of things to show that the relationship is taking off. But my prediction is it's not going to take off over the long haul.
Right, I see. So we'll have to wait and see how Russia considers North Korea. Now, Dr. Go, the reason why cooperation between the two countries mattered so much was because they are violation of multiple UNSC resolutions. And Putin seemed to acknowledge this point because he himself said that there will going to be certain limitations. In what ways would Russia seek cooperation with North Korea?
So, for instance, if Russia buys weapons from North Korea, then that would be the very violation with the first resolution against North Korea that came into existence, the Resolution 1718, which bans the North Korean export of weapons. So, in that sense, and that was a resolution that was agreed upon by Russia. That's why it passed the Security Council. So, in that sense, it's very ironic for Russia to do so.
Right.
And I think that imposes certain limitation on what Russia will do in terms of expanding its military cooperation with North Korea. But then I think that's the reason why they're probably going to package whatever transaction they're going to have in North Korea under the guise of peaceful cooperation, peaceful scientific cooperation or something like that. And this really says a lot about Vladimir Putin's view of international relations. First of all, we know that Putin is an FSB agent by training or KGB agent by training during the Soviet era. And he's very cynical about all these talks about peaceful existence or stability or like peaceful cooperation. He believes everything is essentially about security. So, and then he suspects that, he criticized the United States that the United States itself had conducted this kind of exchanges and transactions with other countries under the guise of peaceful cooperation. So in his paranoid mind, I think it's totally normal for a country like Russia to trade with North Korea in weapons and then label it as a peaceful transaction. And that's probably what's going to take place in the near future. We'll see probably workshops and conferences where the Russian scientists and North Korean scientists get together and discuss about the peaceful exploration of space, for instance. But in reality, what's going on is an actual transfer of technology to North Korea. So really the concern is less about weapons transaction from Russia to North Korea. The other way is less concerning for South Korea, obviously, because those weapons will be used away from the Korean Peninsula and will involve low quality weapons. But then the major source of concern for South Korea will be the transfer from Russia of high-tech, cutting-edge technologies. So I think this is something that we could be happening, but then when it comes to actual weapon systems, it's probably unlikely.
Right. It's interesting to hear how Russia will disguise its real purpose to do what it wants to do. Now, Dr. Barry, shifting our gears to China. China has been relatively keeping silent over Pyongyang-Moscow ties, but soon Putin and Xi Jinping are reportedly going to meet in October. How do you believe China is actually viewing that Pyongyang-Moscow relationship right now?
They're not happy, but they're beset with a lot of problems of their own. I mean, we just learned a few days ago that the defense minister was sacked in China because of alleged corruption, that the foreign minister, according to the Wall Street Journal, had a child out of wedlock in the United States when he was the ambassador of China to the U.S. The economy is reminiscent of America's financial economic difficulties of 2008. So basically, China's in bad shape, and I think if you're Kim Jong-un and you look at the situation, you realize that you not only have an embarrassing and risky dependence on China, but the 30 years of effort that North Korea has made to somehow normalize relations with the U.S. for the purpose of counterbalancing China, he's basically concluded that it doesn't work, that the U.S. is not reliable. And this is essentially the conclusion that Robert Carlin and Siegfried Hecker came up with in foreign policy website about 2.5 weeks ago. Their esteemed conclusion, just looking at the trend of relations. So Kim is not only ill at ease with constant Chinese pressure, but he's wary of China's reliability, both economically and otherwise. And they see a lot of difficulty in China, beginning with Xi's third term that he started last October. So it's a very risky dependence, and basically China's not happy, of course, with North Korea leaning back towards Russia. But it's the united front that they want to give the appearance of is anything but. That would be my conclusion.
Right, I see. Now, we have been, up until now, keep talking about Pyongyang-Moscow ties, but I'd like to also tap on the ongoing UN General Assembly. So, Dr. Barry, soon, President Yoon is expected to deliver a speech at the 78th UN General Assembly's General Debate Session. And experts say that he is going to send a strong message against strengthening ties between North Korea and Russia. What do you expect the tone to be?
Well, you know, President Biden only gave a sentence on North Korea, and that surprised me. But he had a lot of other fish to fry. So I think the point man on that issue of North Korea's weapons of mass destruction and threatening behavior and apparent realignment with Russia is something that President Yoon will definitely put a lot of time in his speech on in about 6 hours or so from now in New York. And my feeling is that it is his job to do so, more so than President Biden, more so than Prime Minister Kishida. So although generally UN speeches tend to be what I would call a buffet, where there's 1 or 2 sentences that deal with each issue, but I think probably the biggest chunk of President Yoon's speech will be dealing with the issue of North Korea. And nobody has put in more effort than President Yoon over the last year in trying to improve South Korea's position of strength in the world and to use that, hopefully, to better stabilize relations in the Northeast Asia region.
All right, I see your point. Now, Dr. Go, the Yoon administration also underscored how South Korea is considering individual measures that can be against North Korea and Russia that can take on its own, but also multilateral measures it could take with key allies such as Washington and Tokyo. What measures could that be?
So clearly, South Korea can place Russia under sanctions, unilateral sanctions, but then I think it will be too maybe South Korea is a real concern that it could be seen as to be too aggressive from Russia. So chances that South Korea is going to work with allies to come up with sanctions against the key players that allows Russia to procure weapons. And then especially if they detect any kind of a transaction going on between North Korea and Russia, and then that's going to be intermediated by a foreign or individual, then South Korea will, along with the allies, apply sanctions against those entities and individuals. But having said that, I think South Korea is already part of the multilateral regime, export control regime against Russia. So I think they could, so one way is to expand the list, but South Korea cannot do that by itself. Chances that South Korea could enforce it more strongly, so that's something very necessary. So I think could be done. But much more tantalizing prospect is a prospect of South Korea assisting Ukraine directly in the military domain. In the aftermath of the closer relationship between Russia and North Korea, and then the summit between Kim Jong-un and Putin, South Korea announced that it's going to supply Ukraine with the 2 Rhino demining equipment. These are essentially tanks. but without the turret that that's capable of attacking the targets. But they only demines mines from the ground. So South Korean government packaged this assistance as a form of a humanitarian help. But in truth, this is a sign to Russia that South Korea is much more capable of supplying Ukraine with lethal weapon systems that could really tilt the balance in the battleground in Ukraine. So I think South Korea is taking tentative measures, sending subtle signals to Russia that South Korea is now capable of hurting Russia where it hurts the most.
I see. Now, Dr. Barry, we are running out of time, but I'd like to ask this last question to you. It seems North Korea is solidifying its alignment with Russia, and experts say South Korea will have to face much harder time dealing with them together in the future. What's your view on this, and what should South Korea's diplomatic direction be?
Well, relations change, but geography does not. So I would say that South Korea needs to carefully manage its relations with China and Russia because those two countries border on the Korean Peninsula. But South Korea should also be unafraid to call both of those countries out and chastise them when their policies are seen as injurious to peace and stability in Northeast Asia as a whole. I think South Korea should not be seen as manipulable, but at the same time, it should be very sensitive to managing its relations with these two large neighbors. So it's a different neighborhood than the neighborhood that the United States lives in, but I think there's a way it can balance it. And I think as time goes on, South Korea will be able to perfect this technique, if you will, to be able to adapt to these very, very turbulent times.
All right. Thank you for your advice, Dr. Barry. Well, unfortunately, this is all the time we have for today's edition. Thank you, Dr. Barry, for your time and insights. And thank you, Dr. Go, for your time and insights as well. We really appreciate it.
Always my pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. That's all for Within the Frame tonight. We'll be back tomorrow with more in-depth stories. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.